The book of Nehemiah is the 16th book of the Old Testament in the Christian Bible, and it is also found in the Jewish Tanakh as one of the books of the Hebrew Bible. This book is named after its main character, Nehemiah, who is a Jewish leader and cupbearer to the Persian king Artaxerxes. The book of Nehemiah is a continuation of the historical account of the Israelites' return from exile in Babylon to Jerusalem, and it focuses on the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem and the restoration of the Jewish community. The book of Nehemiah is set in the 5th century BC, almost a century after the Israelites were exiled to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. At this time, Nehemiah is serving as the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes in the city of Susa, but he has a strong desire to know about the state of the Israelites in Jerusalem. He gets an opportunity to find out when his brother and some other men from Judah visit Susa and tell him about the low state of the returnees. Nehemiah is deeply troubled by this news and is moved to pray to God for guidance. In his prayer, Nehemiah confesses the sins of the Israelites, and he pleads with God to show mercy on them and on Jerusalem. His prayers are answered when the king notices his sadness and asks him about it. Nehemiah tells the king about the situation in Jerusalem and seeks permission to go and help rebuild the city. The king grants him his request, and Nehemiah sets out on his journey to Jerusalem with letters from the king for safe passage and supplies. When Nehemiah arrives in Jerusalem, he faces opposition from some local officials who are displeased with his intentions to rebuild the walls. Despite this resistance, Nehemiah remains determined and, with the help of the people, begins to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. He assigns different families, priests, and Levites to work on different sections of the walls, and they all work diligently to complete the task in a surprisingly short amount of time. The enemies of the Israelites, led by Sanballat and Tobiah, try to discourage and intimidate Nehemiah and his people by mocking their efforts and spreading false rumors. However, Nehemiah remains steadfast in his faith and continues to trust in God as protection. He even arms the workers while they are building to protect them from any attacks. Along with the physical rebuilding of the walls, Nehemiah also turns his attention to the spiritual restoration of the Israelites. He teaches the people the law of Moses, and they gather together to listen and understand its significance once again. They also make a covenant to follow God's commandments and dedicate themselves to him as a nation. Nehemiah also reestablishes the Levitical priesthood and ensures that the proper sacrifices and offerings are made in the temple. As the walls near completion, the enemies of the Israelites realize that their efforts to stop the rebuilding have failed. They make one final attempt to stop Nehemiah and his people by trying to lure him away from Jerusalem, but he sees through their ploy and continues his work. The walls are completed in only 52 days, and the enemies are filled with fear and realize that God is with the Israelites. After the walls are completed, Nehemiah works to reorganize and repopulate Jerusalem. He arranges for Jews who were living in other areas to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their homes. He also ensures that the people keep the Sabbath day holy and refrain from any ungodly practices. Nehemiah is also concerned about the tithes and offerings for the temple and appoints trustworthy officials to oversee these duties. The book of Nehemiah highlights the importance of faith and trust in God, determination in the face of opposition, and the significance of following God's laws. It also shows the power of unity and the strength that comes from working together towards a common goal. Nehemiah's leadership and his zeal for the restoration of Jerusalem inspire the people to follow his example and rededicate themselves to God. This book also serves as a reminder to the Israelites that God is always with them, even in times of struggle and opposition. In conclusion, the book of Nehemiah is a powerful historical account of the rebuilding of Jerusalem as walls and the restoration of the Jewish community. It teaches us about the importance of faith, perseverance, and unity in the face of challenges, and the significance of following God's commandments. Nehemiah's leadership and devotion to God serve as a timeless example for Christians and Jews alike, demonstrating the power of God to restore and rebuild even in the most difficult of circumstances.